I'm Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and my guest today is a guy I've known for many years. He's an executive with RSA. He's named Doug Howard. Doug, welcome to New York.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you.
Good seeing you.
You've had a long career in cybersecurity. I've known you, for decades now. Now you're with RSA. What an incredible company to be with.
It is, and one of the big guys in the marketplace.
It's an iconic brand. There's probably 2 or 3 brands that you would almost think of as being synonymous with security. That's probably a blessing and a curse, right? I mean, you have the obligation of the whole industry on your the big logo.
It is, and I mean, one of the things that we always have to deal with in the marketplace is, are you with a conference or are you with the token company? So the good news is we get to say that, plus let me tell you about all the other things we have.
Yeah, so. That's great, that's great. Now tell me a little bit about the company, about RSA. You guys do, obviously people do know the conference and token, but you have a rich collection of products and services. Tell me about it. We'll get into services later, but what are some of the really awesome products you guys are building now that we should know about?
Yeah, so RSA took a journey to really acquire a series of companies to complement a core strategy. And that core strategy was, let's go to marketplace with foundational elements, not features and functionalities that will eventually be absorbed or become parts of products. And those 4 areas are obviously, number 1 would be our risk. And I think, you and I, especially coming from our operational backgrounds, have always said, cybersecurity is so disconnected from the realities of business risk.
Right.
And so, I'm really excited because obviously I now actually have a platform that can actually automate and help, enable programs that can actually put quantification around risk that can be fed into or pull out information from other things. So the RSA Archer infrastructure.
And industry leader.
Industry leader, well-known.
Been a user for 2.5 decades.
Yeah, exactly. So. Every large company out there, and we've segmented that a bit to go down market as well to make it more affordable to other companies. So foundation number 1 is clearly risk. What is that business risk? What is that cyber risk? What is that digital risk? As you're aware, Dell is also a big believer in the whole digital transformation. So digital risk is a big element of that as well. And then second to that is, what visibility do I have? So, we've bought NetWitness, bought a couple endpoint companies and some other technologies. So now a combination of deep packet along with endpoint, along with SIM technology, being able to get that deeper visibility, no matter what the scenario may be, whether it's inside, outside, whether it's encrypted or not encrypted, and what the actual transactions are occurring.
And more than just network, it's a visibility across ecosystems.
Exactly. So it doesn't matter what the endpoint is, doesn't matter what the origination is. Ultimately, we'll be able to figure out what's happening either at one endpoint or both endpoints, depending on what level of visibility we have. Third one, obviously, is identity. The number 1 compromised origination point for an attack. So we not only have what everybody knows us for is the secure ID tokens, both in a soft form as well as a risk-oriented form now as well, but we also have governance and lifecycle. So being able to actually see what's happening in the environment, should those users be doing it, not just blocking it from an active perspective. And then last, where we're known by larger companies, is obviously on the fraud side. So being able to actually go in, not only at a web level, not only at a transaction level, not only at a user level, but for high volume consumer and high volume partner networks, being able to actually see what is occurring and then alert or take action on a fraud event. And the great news about especially that particular service is either it's fraud or it's not fraud, right? Somebody has to make that determination, and that feeds back into our overall ecosystem to see what's going on in the world based on bad IPs, bad users, bad activity types, different attack vectors.
Is that analytics a layer that feeds all 4 of those areas?
Exactly. So we have some core analytics that share among them. Obviously, it's an evolution, so it gets better and better every day. So we have new product evolutions on each one of those individual products that are bettering the product, and then we have those that are sharing at a core as well.
Yeah. I would think that now the analytic piece used to be a little topping on the cake, but now it's more or less becoming the cake and the different pieces set on top. Has that been an important area for you guys, like kind of really driving analytics to that next level?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to make all of our products better, number one. But then there's been companies that have gone out and obviously made it a product or a service by itself. And so where we've evolved is now exploring and being able to actually present that at a higher level so they can use this analytics at a non-purpose built level as well. So in other words, being able to actually take advantage of the underlying analytics platform itself versus it being only integrated into the products.
You know, I was excited last year when you were telling me about what you're doing, and it's so service oriented. Tell us about the business. I bet a lot of people watching don't necessarily think, at least think in legacy terms, about RSA as being kind of a leader in training and consulting and services and so on. You tell me some of the numbers there, and I think, my goodness, you guys are really quite a big set of offerings in those areas. Tell us about service.
Yeah, so our service approach is not only to have it at a consulting level, right? It's given our products and our foundational elements is to expand that consulting type of approach all the way through customer support, as an example, or training. And to do that, you can't orient around only your products. So you've got to be able to orient around understanding what the customer's ecosystem is. So, if somebody calls and they're using packets, for example, NetWitness, but they may be using a different SIM altogether. Or they may call and they may have a different endpoint, or they may have a different fraud system. And so having our analysts be able to talk about all of those capabilities across the spectrum of 750 people that are full-time employees and 250 contractors that we bring in based on geo or specialty expertise is critical. Now, on the consulting level, where we now are going to the marketplace to be more solution-oriented, so here is a SIM and all the infrastructure it has, but now let's build everything around that. Let's make sure you have a program in place. Let's make sure that you have an IR plan in place. Let's make sure you practice that. Now also, let's make sure that you have people on your staff that are certified ethical hackers. Make sure that you have trained analysts that know how to use the tools, not only ours, but other third-party tools as well. So when we do training and various other things, while certainly RSA obviously would be an element of that, it is not the only core element of everything that we provide.
Did these grow out of customers demanding that you do it? I have a sense that a lot of people probably were feeling like you guys were well positioned to do this instead of like some business school exercise. Like, am I reading that right?
Yeah, so 3 or 4 years ago, basically the company, every engagement we did would orient around somebody that bought an RSA technology, right? And so initially it was, hey, get me up and running, make it, get the best value as I can out of these products. And then second to that was like, hey, wait a second, my problem is bigger than just this component you're providing or this ecosystem you're providing. I want to be able to integrate threat intel into my infrastructure. I want to be able to take this risk element and introduce that into other areas of my business that aren't cyber, for example. And I want to be able to take those things and really grow my overall enterprise to be more risk oriented or be better at cyber or whatever that may be. And so out of that sprung some high level consultants. A lot of our guys came from some of the big four, for example, the IBMs of the world and various others. And so what we did was those individuals and said, okay, look, it's great that you're servicing our existing client base, and certainly we've got a very large client base to service, but at the end of the day, let's take this and separate it from the product area and orient it for helping clients go down a journey, which may or may not include RSA. And at the end of the day, what we were able to do is about 50% of our business today doesn't orient around the initial sale of an RSA product. So it's us coming in and helping build a cyber program, helping build a program around IR, a risk management program, those types of things.
Yeah. I'm going to guess that a big percentage of your customers are talking cloud and how do I virtualize? How do I move out? Is that a sort of is security now really a pretty fundamental component in something like that? Like, hey, my perimeter isn't kind of working and we're going to cloud. Is that something that you guys hear a lot? I would think the word cloud must come up quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got some component of cloud, right? And so I don't think we even look at it as a specialty trend anymore. It's more like, okay, they're either 2% in the cloud or they're 100%
It's
in the
part
cloud.
of the infrastructure.
It's just part of the
Yeah,
infrastructure, just
yeah.
like mobile would be, or somebody taking their laptop off site or something of that sort. It's just a new thing that we have to focus on, or not a new thing anymore, as you allude, but a thing we have to focus on and part of the overall program. So for example, we have risk modules that focus on being able to orient around cloud. We have taps that go into any of the public cloud providers that allow us to see packets, as an example. So being able to create that commonality, as we always talked about, across whatever environment they have, whether it used to be geo and maybe mobile came up, now cloud is just a logical extension. Do they have data centers? Do they have cloud? Do they have hybrids? Whatever that may be.
Interesting.
So absolutely.
You mentioned incident response a couple of times. Help me understand, what's the state of the practice there? Is automation pretty much assumed nowadays in doing a good IR program? Do you need to have tools and platforms and things?
Yeah, so one of the, again, exciting
Instead
areas
of just
for
a
me.
process.
Right, and look, there's some great IR firms out there that are people oriented and they use products kind of based on what's good today and changes out tomorrow, right? I think our advantage has been that we use our core technology first, and then we wrap other third-party products around it. I mean, you can't be an IR firm and have one product, regardless of what that is. And so the nice thing for us is when we go in and we leverage that, a customer gets to see our tools. If they're not an existing client, they get to see the power of being able to see that. And very often they will actually acquire those products at the end. So what I say to my guys is, look, we're not paying you ever for selling product. We're not going to pay you for leads. You're independent consultants. But if you don't believe in our product, we're doing something wrong. So either you need to give more feedback to the product guys to do things, or we need to spend more time making sure you understand our product. And so with that comes the ability for them to confidently talk about the product. But again, we make sure that they're never incented to provide those products as part of any incentive they get back.
That's a tricky thing because you guys know the products well, like you said, and I guess that's the hallmark of maybe a good consulting and service and solution delivery team in a company that also sells products, to have that ability to balance, because if you really do have the right solution, then you want to recommend it. And if you don't, then you integrate it in.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's not the perfect fit for every customer. So, even if it was the best product in the world, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a perfect fit for every client, right? And so I think our customers recognize that, we recognize that, and I think in the field is really where it shows. I mean, if you've got a consultant out there and they're just pushing a product all the time, you're going to lose confidence and trust with that customer immediately. And so our guys know, not to go down that path. Now, just like MSS, which we've all been involved with as well, is if you try to support 92 different products where every consultant is out running their own kind of little business, the experience the customer is getting and the output of the value the customer is getting is not going to be where you want either. And so, again, there's trade-offs for both sides.
Tell me a little bit more about the training and how people watching might be able to benefit from what you guys are doing. What you were sharing with me earlier sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah, so just like consulting, we said we can't be the end all for everything in the world. So let's build expertise around particular areas. And so what we did is we went out and looked at third-party products and services that are oriented around training, brought some of those in, and they make some of our core capabilities. And there's certain areas like certified ethical hacking where there's leaders in the marketplace, and instead of us going out and building that from scratch, we partner. Now, obviously, on our core product or areas we have expertise, we tend to do those ourselves, right? So we're going to build our own product training as an example, and we make that available online, instructor-led, however you want to consume it, we make it available. And then in other areas, there's the capabilities of bringing in third parties, and admittedly, because of our scale and our size, the cost difference to a customer is usually cheaper with us than many of the other direct relationships. And so we integrate those into broader programs to take a customer on a journey that they're trying to achieve versus here's your one training here with this one company and put it together. And so we actually, just this year, turned those into actual certifications. So now when you take a combination of 5 or 6 different courses together, you get a particular certification that's recognized in the marketplace. And then we do things like, I mentioned certified ethical hacking, but we'll do CIISP, we'll do, a number of different things that are, more industry oriented as well.
The conference must help just literally build the brand around training. I wonder how many people would consider the RSA conference to be like the bulk of their training each year, right? I'm guilty. I mean, I go and I just wallow in everything for a week. I bet that must give you a lot of sort of headroom training.
It's a good and a bad, right? I mean, so the reality is, from a branding perspective, we've taken the perspective that this is an industry event.
Yeah.
That we can't really leverage it as a RSA event per se.
Yeah.
And so if you go to most of the training there, it's not RSA oriented. Right? It's not provided by RSA, it's provided, we open up the ecosystem for anybody to be able to come in and present, to create their own training. And just as part of the normal, full ticket or whatever that engagement is, customers get to come and actually get more training than they would ever do going through any type of formal training just by attending the various speaker engagements.
Let me ask you a little bit about some future stuff. Any technologies right now that you think people should really keeping an eye on? Like, are you an AI guy, or what do you think? What are the really exciting new things happening?
Yeah, I think if you look at kind of where the marketplace is going, there's 2 areas. One, which we acquired which was end user behavior, Ford Scale acquisition. And so taking the analytics that they had, taking the analytics we had, and actually being able to do end user behavioral analytics, not only on the user, but on an entity, right? An IP address, some type of point that you've referenced.
So watching behaviors and looking for anomalous activity, and taking some action when you see it.
Yeah, exactly. And so obviously from an end user perspective, being able to orient that around identity inputs, being able to orient that around packet and endpoint as well as a log input gives us probably more visibility. Not that you can't stitch it together in other solutions, but it gives us more visibility that we can build an ecosystem around.
Helps with insider.
It helps with insider threats. It helps, and obviously was a compromise as well. The second one,
I would agree, that is an important area.
Yeah, and it leverages all the analytics, right? It leverages that deep visibility. It leverages the broad visibility, and it leverages that foundational element of all the AI that we have underneath of that. And then on top of that, what do you do with the events? And so different vendors, including ourselves, have taken various steps of, okay, if this event plus this anomaly plus this other thing happened, what do I do with it? But taking orchestration to the next level as well, and being able to actually integrate that into your risk platform that is grabbing parts of your business risk, parts of your inventory control, parts of the value proposition of your vulnerability scanning data, all of those things, and integrating that in. And again, different vendors, including ourselves, have done that at varying levels. So we believe at an orchestration level, tying together a combination of things that are somewhat dissimilar today, business information, obviously network visibility, identity, and so forth, gives us a leg up on the competition at a technology level.
Does that orchestration lead eventually to a fully automated defense, where you have like an automated offense against a defense? It's like this big video game or something, like an online robot versus robot. Is that crazy thinking? It might be.
So no, right? Everything's an evolution. And so, what looked magical to us 10 years ago, is now standard out of the box for a lot of things, right? And so absolutely, the robot to a robot is arguably already happening, right? Yeah. It's when you throw the unexpected human element in it that knows what all the robots are expecting, that things change.
Curating the game.
Curating the game.
Well, it'll always be people, but you're right. It is, maybe today you could couch it as automation versus automation.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of automation versus automation today. Right. It's not so far as to say that you don't need a human, right? And I would say analysts are as important today as ever before, if not more important. And it shifts, right? So what used to be an analyst doing X, Y, and Z manually now is the one that's looking at everything that's happening and figuring out how to optimize the back end, either through enabling the AI capabilities or guiding it through some type of things to look at.
Yeah, I always think that's so funny. I remember one time David Letterman put a humidifier and a dehumidifier in the room to see who would win. I always think that's like cybersecurity, right? And then you curate the two.
Yeah.
How about on the darker side, threat? Like, again, you and I have been staring at hackers and nation states and criminals for many years. What do you think, man? Is this getting, here's how I'll put it. You tell me what you think. I think we would all agree that right now the offense getting better, defense definitely getting better, but most people would say for a while the offense may be going a little faster than the defense. Can we close that gap, or is it closing? What do you think? If you extrapolate out, do we catch up, or does it get worse?
Yeah, I think kind of working in the AT&Ts of the world and the RSAs of the world, big U.S. Air Force, military background, and different things that we probably have more awareness of how bad things could be and how much energy is being thrown. I think to a lot of people that maybe are in a standard enterprise and so forth, they look at it as, look, this is just the industry throwing up FUD to get you to buy more.
Bunch of ransomware and viruses, what's the big deal?
Right, exactly. And so I think it's a much scarier scenario when you look at the size and money that is thrown in other countries. Bruce Schneier and I used to have a debate. He said for a long time that cyber warfare was a fantasy, right? And he's changed his tune. But and my perspective was, what are you talking about? Like, this is the real world. If people are going to fight physically, it's only logical eventually they were going to convert over to cyber. And the more things that come online, and we were talking before we started here, there are just more and more things that are coming online that have to be IP based, just because it's a natural evolution, that historically were not major threats, right? You had to go through 6 layers of IT and applications to ever get to changing something, whether that would be a SCADA type of environment or ICS or IoT, whatever that may be. Those things now are directly accessible to have them do different things than they were intended to do. And so that creates a lot of risk in the world, especially when there's a lot of bad guys, ultimately spending lots of big funds and a lot of effort to really be able to have control of those or manipulate those in some way.
So do you think we catch up, the defense? Maybe?
I think you and I are safe in this particular industry for a very long time, as are my kids, by the way. So
job security, good.
Job security,
cyber
good.
security, we'll see.
Risk still tracking a little high.
I worry about the destructive malware. I think that's something that's been under attended to. I know at the conference there's always a lot of talks about it, but when you're chatting with people, it gets always to credential theft and fears for that, and appropriately, some horrible breaches. But when I think about the possibility that life and safety critical things can be influenced negatively, it gets me a little nervous, because I don't want to go through that and then have to fix it, because going through that is different than losing your credentials. Losing the heat in the wintertime is a little different.
Yeah, I think it varies, right?
Worry about that.
The scenario I always use, to kind of break somebody into the IoT, concern is, look, my wife was looking at an IoT refrigerator, right? It was smart, it did all these things, and first of all, I didn't understand why any of it was important, but the point being that if I open my refrigerator at 6 a.m. every morning for a week, and I've done that for 22 weeks straight, and all of a sudden I don't for a period of time, like maybe Monday, I was in a rush, I ran out. Maybe Tuesday, probably unlikely, so now I'm on vacation, or I'm out of town, or I'm something. So all of a sudden the physical threat of burglary now comes into play with cyber, because if somebody had that information, they would know immediately that I'm probably out of town. What a creepy refrigerator. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want that.
And then on the extreme, right, go to some of the autonomous vehicles, which we've been talking about, the security concerns there. You talk about air transportation, but even the example you used, heating and cooling. I think people are like, I can live without my heating and cooling. The reality is, if Armageddon storm hit New York City and somebody was able to cut down all of the power in the city, hundreds of people, if not thousands or tens of thousands of people, would probably die.
Yes.
If it was a cold wave with snow, unable to access, for a period of a week, you would literally have thousands of
No, that's why I bring it up.
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of people who've said that before the kind of work you and I do gets really taken seriously, people have to die. And I think what a sad kind of target for legitimizing a discipline. I hope that doesn't have to be the case.
Yeah, no, and I mentioned this earlier as we were meeting with a law firm just before this. And they were like, you guys got to hit the marketplace talking about all the, scary stuff that can happen, control of vehicles, shutting down of, power plants, all that stuff. And I was like, look, the industry did that 4 or 5 years ago. And probably a little before its time. It was probably 10 years ago, actually. So a little bit before its time, so people didn't quite get the relationships that we were all talking about. And I think it got written off to FUD again.
Yeah.
And I think now people actually see that. So if they've got any technical acclimate, they start to see all the ICS systems that are all migrating to be 100% controlled by IP. The openness of those systems to a large degree. You've seen Stuxnet. You've seen all of these things that are proving out what can happen, but in smaller scale, even though they were big scale sometimes, but smaller scale relative to what could happen.
So interesting. We got to finish on a positive note. All that negative stuff. You look like you're having so much fun running the business over there, running the services team, and they're lucky to have you. You have so much experience. I wish you well. Make sure you're out there helping all these businesses. We need you to do that. Makes us safer.
There you go. Thanks very much, sir.
It's so great to see you, Doug.
Great seeing you.
Thanks for coming by New York.
Thanks.
Good deal. And we'll see you next time.